Happy Halloween, my beloved Narratrix family, and welcome to the night the world turns to shadows. Tonight isn't just another horror compilation, it's a gathering of you, of me, and of all who crave something deeper than cheap scares. We've grown into a family of over 30,000 souls, and you've proven that horror doesn't need to scream to be heard. Here we believe in depth horror, where every chill has a heartbeat and every nightmare has a reason. So, if you're new, welcome home. Like, share and subscribe if you dare, because this channel thrives on your presence. Every click, every comment, every whisper of support helps me craft the stories that feed the fire and keep the darkness alive. So settle in close to the glow. The cocoa's warm, the fire's crackling, and the veil between worlds is thinning. Let's begin. When you grow up in Seoul, you hear all kinds of stories about ghosts and tunnels, mirrors that remember you, and elevators that don't always take you where you asked to go. Most people laugh them off, urban legends, sleepover dares, but I don't laugh anymore. Because last Halloween, I played one of those games, and I don't think I ever came back. It started as a joke between friends. We'd found a thread online, a Korean elevator challenge. You press the buttons in a certain sequence, and if you do it right, you reach a world that looks like ours, but isn't. 10 floors, 1 player, no interruptions. If anyone gets in, you start again. If a woman gets in on the 5th floor, you don't look at her. You don't speak, no matter what she says. And if you reach the 10th floor, you'll know. I should have stopped there. It was late, close to midnight. The building was almost empty, just the flicker of vending machine light in the lobby. My friends filmed from the corner, cheering, half drunk, calling me brave. The elevator doors closed, and suddenly it was quiet. Too quiet. I pressed the buttons exactly as the instructions said. 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, 5. The elevator moved smoothly. No music, no creaks, just a soft hum, like it was holding its breath. On the 5th floor, the doors opened, and she stepped in. She wore a white coat, her hair damp like she'd just come in from the rain. She didn't look at me, but I could feel her face pointed right at mine. I pressed the button for the 10th floor. The doors closed. The elevator began to rise. Slowly. So slowly. Halfway up, she said my name. Soft, like someone remembering. G1. My friends hadn't used my name. I hadn't told anyone the time I'd play. I stared at the floor numbers. 7, 8, 9. The lights flickered. The hum deepened. Not mechanical, human. A low note that vibrated through my teeth. When the doors opened, the 10th floor looked wrong. The lights were on, but the hallway beyond was dim, washed in red, like from a distant fire. I stepped out. Everything looked the same. Same tiles, same vending machine, air smelled like iron. I walked to the window. The city below was gone, only endless black, no stars, no sound. Then I heard the elevator doors close behind me. And the hum stopped. When I turned around, the floor numbers above the elevator flashed over and over. 5, 5, 5. When the doors opened again, she was there. Same wet hair, but her face was wrong. Not monstrous, just mine. Smiling. She reached out her hand and said, "You pressed it wrong." I don't remember leaving, only waking up in my bed, my phone full of messages from my friends. They said the elevator had come back down empty, that I'd been gone 3 hours. Now, every time I take an elevator, it stops at the 5th floor, even when no button's pressed. Sometimes the doors open and I see her, myself, standing there. And every time, I wonder which one of us made it back. When people talk about Halloween of 74, they talk about the candy. They never talk about the house, or the man inside it, or me. Back then, our street in Pasadena was the kind that smelled of pumpkin guts and petrol. My dad carved faces into everything, pumpkins, apples, even soap bars. He said it made people laugh. That night, he seemed normal, maybe happier than usual. Mum had gone to bed early. I was sitting cross-legged on the carpet, sorting through sweets I'd collected when he came in holding a new bowl. A silver one. He said, "Let's make the kids' night special." I remember the smell, something chemical hiding beneath the sugar. He let me pick one before the doorbell rang again. I didn't eat it. I wanted to save it. That's what saved me. The rest of the night is noise, laughter, screams, sirens that cut through the music on the radio. By morning, the papers were calling it the trick-or-treat murders, and my father's smile was on every front page. He said he wanted attention, that he wanted to teach people a lesson about greed. But I think he just wanted to feel powerful. The thing they never wrote about is what happened after. The bowl. They took it away as evidence. But when I came home months later, after the trial, after the neighbours stopped looking at me, the bowl was back, on the table, shining, empty. And every Halloween since, I've heard it. The hollow clink, like candy falling into metal, even when the house is empty. Sometimes I think he's still handing them out, not to children now, but to people like me, people who keep remembering. I keep the bowl covered, but every October 31st, the lid lifts itself. Delhi at night has its own language. The horns, the dogs, the whispers of people you'll never meet again. I drive through it all, 12 hours a night, every night. Just me, the engine, and the stories the city tells when it thinks no one's listening. It was Halloween, though here it's just another word from somewhere else. Still, people were out late. Parties, masks, drinks. I was waiting near Khan Market when she got in. A woman, white sari, no shoes, smiling. She laughed when I asked where to. Connaught Place, she said between laughs. Soft voice, musical. I remember thinking she didn't sound drunk, just happy. The kind of happy that doesn't belong in the real world. As we drove, she talked about the city, about love, about how people forget what they promise when they cross bridges. I didn't understand really, but her laughter filled the car like perfume, sweet, heavy, impossible to ignore. Then the air turned cold. My rearview mirror fogged, and I realized we'd been driving in circles. Same road, same lights, same turn. Every time I glanced back, she was looking out the window, still smiling, still laughing. But I could see her reflection in the glass, and in the reflection, her mouth wasn't moving. When I stopped the car, she looked at me properly this time. Her face was wrong, like water rippling over a photograph. She said, "We're here." I looked around. We were in a cemetery. Before I could speak, she opened the door, stepped out, and vanished. The back seat was dry, but the ground outside was wet. I checked the address later. There was no house, just her name carved into a headstone. Now, every Halloween, I still take one last passenger, and when she laughs, I don't turn around. Italians are social people, and yet people always ask why I smile so much. They say it's unsettling, that it doesn't look happy, it looks stuck. They don't understand that smiling is the only thing that stops my face from falling apart. When I was 12, someone took my picture while I was asleep. It was in the old apartment, a one-room flat that smelled like mold and hair dye. My mother worked nights. She'd leave at dusk and come back at sunrise, and in between, I was alone. Sometimes, I'd wake to the flash of her camera. She said she took pictures of me because I looked peaceful. But in every photo, my eyes were open. She swore they weren't. The last photo she took was on Halloween. I woke up to the sound of her crying. The camera lay on the floor, the picture still in the slot. It showed my bed and me standing next to it. My mouth stretched too wide, my skin pale and tight. The eyes weren't mine. The That was the night the fire started. They said it began in my room, that my mother had passed out smoking, but I remember the smell, plastic, not tobacco, and the sound, like someone laughing through a broken throat. They found me outside, covered in soot, smiling. I spent months in hospital. They said the burns healed beautifully, but I couldn't move my face. Every time I tried to frown, my scars tore open again. So I learned to keep smiling. It's funny. People are kinder when you smile. They think you're fine. They look at your teeth, not your eyes. That's when I realized a smile can hide anything. I started taking photos again, not of myself, of others, strangers in the street, sleeping people through windows. Sometimes I'd knock on the door just to see how long they'd smile back before realizing I wasn't there to sell anything. Everyone wants to be seen. No one wants to be known. You've probably seen one of my photos online. The ones they call unexplained. A woman in bed, eyes open. A man at his kitchen table smiling while asleep. The reflection in the mirror that isn't looking at the camera. Those are mine, every one of them. But lately, something strange has been happening. In my newest pictures, I'm not behind the lens anymore. I'm in them, standing in corners, smiling too wide, watching myself take the shot. I think the camera remembers who I used to be. The thing that smiled for me before the fire. Maybe it still wants to finish what it started. Maybe it's jealous. Because now I take the picture, the perfect picture, every time. I don't even need light anymore. Just smile for me. When you grow up in Tokyo, Halloween is just another excuse to wear a costume and take selfies, of course. But my friend Kenji wanted something real. He said the city had lost its ghosts. So he dared me to go to the old Shimizu shrine, the one swallowed by the forest after the typhoon. He said people stopped visiting it because of the girl with the fox mask. I thought it was just one of his stories until I went. It was October 31st, almost midnight. The air smelled of wet cedar and smoke from someone's barbecue miles away. I brought a lantern and a small cup of sake just to play along. You're supposed to leave offerings for the fox spirits, or so the legend says. The path was narrow, roots clawing through the earth. Somewhere, far off, fireworks cracked, then silence. Just the sound of the forest breathing. When I reached the shrine, it was smaller than I expected. Wood dark with age. The rope around the offering box frayed. And she was there. A girl, maybe my age, kneeling before the shrine, wearing a white kimono, a fox mask tied behind her head. But she was facing the wrong way, toward the forest, not the altar. I almost called out, but then she turned her head, without moving her body, just the mask twisting toward me. I froze. She whispered something, soft, almost kind, but the voice came from behind me. I dropped the lantern. The flame died. Darkness swallowed everything. When I looked again, she was gone. Only the mask lay on the ground, face down. I picked it up, I don't know why, and turned it over. The inside was wet, like someone had been crying into it. When I woke the next morning, I was in my bed. My phone showed no photos, no calls, no proof, except the mask hanging from the window latch, still dripping. Sometimes, at night, I hear her praying. Always the same words, but she says them backward. Halloween night in Yorkshire has its own kind of cold. It isn't sharp like London's or wet like Manchester's. It's the sort that seeps, quiet and patient, into your bones until your laughter turns thin. I remember the year it began, 1987. We'd just moved into number 19, a semi-detached on a small cul-de-sac that looked the same as every other. Children ran about in costumes made from bin bags, torches flickering in their hands, shouting, "Trick or treat!" into the wind. We were still unpacking boxes, so we hadn't planned to join in. Around 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the door, a soft, polite knock. When I opened it, there was a little girl, maybe 9, maybe 10. She wore a pale blue coat with a white ribbon in her hair. No bucket for sweets, no mask, no smile. Just those eyes, too serious for her age. "Trick or treat?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just tilted her head and said, "Have you seen my mum?" I told her no, I hadn't, and asked where she lived. She pointed, not at a house, but past them, down the street, into the dark. Then she said, "I'll come back tomorrow. Maybe you'll remember by then." And she left. Strange, I thought. But it's Halloween. Kids get odd ideas. Except she came back every year. Always the same night. Always the same knock. Always the same question. "Have you seen my mum?" She never aged. Not once. By the 5th year, I stopped opening the door, but even through the glass, I could see her, standing there, ribbon neat, coat clean, but her shoes were soaked, leaving wet prints on the dry path. One year, my husband answered instead. He told her to stop coming, that we weren't her parents, that this was cruel. The girl just said, "It's not cruel, it's remembering." Then she walked away again, and the air turned bitter, like the moment before snow. It wasn't until years later we found out about the flood, the one that swept through the village 8 years before we moved there. A child had been lost that night, her mother never found, and their house Number 19. Every Halloween since, someone hears her knock. Sometimes she asks the same question. Sometimes she just stands there, listening. Maybe she's still waiting to be let in. Or maybe she's waiting for her mother to answer. And sometimes, when the night's quiet enough, I still hear her knocking from inside the house. Have you seen my mum? People say Beijing never truly sleeps, but that's not true. It dreams in neon. I worked the late shift back then. By the time I left the office, the streets were half asleep, and the wind tasted like metal and exhaust. I used to catch the last bus from the Eastern District, the number 302, except that night, it wasn't the 302. It was raining, and the stop was almost empty. When the headlights appeared through the mist, I remembered thinking how quiet the engine sounded, like it was gliding. The driver didn't look at me. He just nodded once, and I climbed aboard. Only 3 other passengers sat scattered in the dim interior. 2 men slumped forward, and a woman with her head tilted too far back, as if she'd fallen asleep mid-sigh. The bus smelled strange, not dirty, sweet, sickly, like the air before a thunderstorm. The windows fogged up instantly, and no matter how I wiped them, my reflection stayed. Not the same one either. Older, tired, like it had waited there longer than I'd been alive. When we passed the 3rd stop, the driver didn't slow down. The city outside had thinned into darkness, buildings receding into fog. I pressed the bell. Nothing. The sound didn't work. But the woman's head turned. Her eyes were open now. White. Not milky blind. Reflective. Like 2 coins glinting in the dark. The driver's mirror showed all 4 of us. But when I looked up again, there were 5. A new reflection, a shape standing in the aisle. It wasn't facing me, it was facing the woman, and its head moved like it was smelling her. I blinked, and the lights flickered. When they came back, the 2 men were gone. Their seats were wet. I whispered to the driver, "What's happening?" He didn't look away from the road. You shouldn't have boarded. The rain outside had stopped, but droplets still streaked the windows from the inside. The woman stood, slowly. Her joints creaked like dry wood. She smiled, and every tooth looked like it had been sharpened. "They were hungry," she said. "They still are." Then she stepped off the moving bus. When I looked at the mirror again, the driver was gone. The bus kept moving, but the wheel turned on its own. The city outside was gone too. Only an endless road, lit by a light that had no source. And from the back of the bus, the sound of chewing. Wet, slow, satisfied. They found me at dawn, asleep on a bench miles from the city. They said there hadn't been a night bus in that area for years. But sometimes when it rains, I still hear the hiss of air brakes in the distance, and a voice, faint and wet, saying, "Next stop." People think Carnival is pure joy. Colour, music, laughter, the city alive and burning with it. But there's a moment around 3 a.m. when the drums slow down and the streets start to empty. That's when Rio feels different, like something's watching the last dancers leave. That's when I first saw her. I was working as a tour photographer, taking night shots of the street parades for a travel magazine. By the last night of Carnival, I'd been awake for almost 3 days. Too much coffee, not enough sleep. I told myself the things I saw were just exhaustion. But the woman in the red mask, she looked straight into my lens and whispered my name. I froze, because I'd never met her. I thought maybe I misheard, so I lowered the camera and looked around, but the crowd had thinned and she was gone. Only the faint scent of smoke and something sweet, like burnt sugar, hung in the air. Later that night, as I uploaded my photos to the hotel laptop, I found her in every frame. Sometimes in the crowd, sometimes at the edge of the shot, sometimes behind me, always looking directly at the camera. And the strangest thing, her mask changed colour each time. By dawn, I couldn't stand the heat in the room anymore. The air conditioner hummed, but it felt like the city was breathing through the walls. Then came a knock on the door. 3 times, soft, rhythmic, like a samba beat. When I opened it, no one was there, just a single red feather on the floor, smouldering like a match had touched it. I tried to find her the next night. The parades were smaller by then, locals dancing in the old district, music echoing through narrow streets. But everywhere I went, I saw red. Masks, ribbons, sequins, and the faces behind them blurred, like they were all becoming her. When I asked the vendors about the woman in red, they went silent. One old man finally said, "If she looked at you, it's already too late." I laughed, but I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the hotel fire alarm woke me. The room 3 floors below mine burned. No cause found. The guest, a woman, gone. When the firefighters dragged out her belongings, I saw a melted carnival mask, red, and a camera. My model, my brand. I left Rio the next day, but the photos stayed. I tried deleting them, but they reappeared in new folders, each time with one difference. In every picture, the woman stood closer, her mask cracked, her smile wider. And last week, I took a picture of myself in the mirror. She was behind me, wearing my face. They say Carnival is about losing yourself, but no one tells you what happens when something else finds you first. I used to think fear was an evolutionary reflex, an ancient instinct that could be explained, studied, measured. That was before Lahore, before the well. I came back home after 12 years in London, PhD in psychology, ready to teach cultural belief systems and trauma. I thought I understood fear until I met her. Her name was Sadaf. She came to us through a colleague in psychiatry, a quiet woman in her 40s, educated, articulate, and absolutely convinced that something was living beneath her building. She said it whispered her name every night just before Fajr, the hour before dawn. I asked what it said. It asks for water, she said, and when I don't answer, it says it's thirsty for me. Her phrasing unsettled me. I noted it as symbolic. A projection of guilt, perhaps. Hydration often features in delusion tied to religious folklore. But she was calm, too calm. When I asked what she thought it was, she looked at me as though I were a child and said, "It's not a what, doctor, it's a who, a jinn from the well." I remember writing Classical Case of Intrusive Mythic Cognition. I regret that sentence more than anything I've ever written. Weeks passed. I recorded our sessions. Session 1, mild paranoia. Session 2, anxiety, fragmented sleep. Session 3, silence. She wouldn't speak for 20 minutes. Then she whispered, "It followed me here." I asked what she meant. She said it used to live near her old house, a colonial bungalow in Rawalpindi, built over an ancient well that had been sealed with stone. She said she made the mistake of calling down into it, a deer from her neighbour's child. She was 9. I said my name, she told me, and the well said it back. After that, her family started hearing things. Soft knocks at dawn, the smell of burnt jasmine, water pooling under closed doors. They called a Maulvi a cleric who recited verses from the Quran, especially from Surah al-Jinn and Ayat al-Kursi. But the smell never left. She said when her mother poured water into the well to calm it, it hissed. I kept telling myself it was shared psychosis, cultural delusion, until I listened back to our 3rd session tape. I heard her voice, soft, scared, and then another, low, masculine, like breath on a cold window. "Give water, take shadow." I froze, because I remembered those exact words from a story my grandmother used to tell when the power went out during monsoon season. She'd warn us never to play near wells. She said some were sealed not because they ran dry, but because they were full of something else. She used to say, when you offer water to a jinn, it drinks your reflection. As a child, I thought that meant nothing. As a psychologist, I thought it meant fear. Now, I think it meant truth. After that tape, I stopped sleeping properly. I kept hearing water drip behind my desk. Once, I found condensation on my office mirror, as though someone had breathed on it from the inside. Then came Halloween night. Not a big event here, but the university students still celebrated. The generator lights flickered outside my window, and somewhere below, I heard the sound of a woman laughing. It wasn't Sadaf. She'd gone missing 2 days earlier. I went to the courtyard. The guards had left. Only the old stone well remained. Wet fingerprints marking the edge. When I leaned closer, the air from below was hot, like someone's breath. And beneath it, a whisper, my own voice. What will you give me in return? I ran, but when I got home there was water pooled under my door. It was clean, clear, and in it, my reflection was smiling, even though I wasn't. I played the old recording again. This time, after the voice said, "Give water, take shadow," there was a sound. The same dripping rhythm I'd been hearing in my room, and underneath it, recitation from among the jinn and among humankind. The end of Surah An-Nas, the prayer against unseen whisperers. Except the voice reciting it wasn't mine. It's 3:42 a.m. now. The water is rising. I can hear it gurgling under the tiles. Every time I blink, the shadow behind me moves closer. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's psychosis, or maybe Sadaf was right. They say the jinn live where we built too deep, where we buried water and faith and every unanswered prayer. I think it's thirsty again. If I pour the water, maybe it'll take what's left of me and leave. And maybe then I'll finally sleep. They say Tokyo never sleeps, but that's not true. It just dreams, loudly. If you listen long enough, you can hear it turning over. The trains beneath, the hum of vending machines, the sigh of neon signs giving up for the night. I used to think that sound was comfort. Now I know it's breathing. And sometimes it calls my name. It started last winter, after my mother's funeral. I kept her old flip phone because deleting her number felt like killing her again. Some nights, I'd call it just to hear the operator say, "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." It was a ritual, a small, controlled grief. Until one night, it rang. 3 tones, and then static. Not white noise, wet static, like something breathing through the line. Then her voice. Ayaka. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't a recording. She said it like she was surprised I'd answered. I whispered, "Mom," and the static moved, like cloth dragging across the floor. Then, so faint I almost missed it, "Come home." And the line died. But the smell stayed. Rainwater and incense, the smell of her funeral. I tried to laugh it off. Grief does strange things. But when I checked the phone history, the call had come from my own number. And my phone was still in my hand. That night, I woke to the ringtone playing from my kitchen. The old phone, the one I'd buried with her. It was lying on the counter, wet. Every night since, the city goes strange at 3:12. The vending machine outside flickers. The power hums slows. And my reflection in the glass starts lagging behind me. I hear 2 sets of footsteps when I walk to the window. The air in the room shifts, like someone just stood up behind me. Sometimes I see her face pressed against the glass. Not angry, not loving, just patient. Last night, the phone didn't ring. The walls did. From inside them. Each vibration came with a whisper, layered, overlapping, like hundreds of voices trying to remember the same sentence. You left her, you left her, you left. I screamed for it to stop, and it did. But only because something started humming instead. The same lullaby she used to sing during storms, except now it was coming from the sink drain. I unplugged everything, threw the phone in the river, but every night at 3:12 the power dies across the block and the static hum returns through the walls, the pipes, my teeth. When I open my mouth, the sound comes out. Mom, I can't tell if I'm hearing you or if you're still trying to finish dying through me. The city hums back. O Kairi, welcome home. Thank you, my Narratrix family, for another night shared between the worlds of sleep and shadow. This channel wouldn't exist without you. Every single one of you who listens, feels, and keeps horror meaningful. But our journey doesn't end here. Next time, we'll gather again for a Thanksgiving unlike any other, where gratitude meets dread and familiar voices join the table. You'll be treated to some very special guest narrators, one who dwells in the darkness of the land of the rising sun, and another who whispers from the shadows of an island veiled in mist. So, stay close, keep the bell on, and remember, some stories don't want to trick you, they just want to treat. Until next time, I'll be waiting in the dark, just where you left me, and where the stories breathe.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.